name is Carrie Tracy, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker at Lantern Lane Farm. And generally, I work with families and children birth to 7 or 8. So young children, but definitely serving families that have experienced trauma or attachment needs. I do play therapy. We have a lot of staff members that work with families and children. So just know there's many resources out there for you guys. So we'll kind of open up this dialogue tonight. Does anybody need a handout? Did everyone get a handout? Okay. And then there's also some cards over there if you would like to write any questions, and we'll have some discussion after we go through this. So a lot of the information that I'm presenting tonight, I got off of Carolyn Knorr, so K-N-O-R-R, and it was an article that she wrote for the Mental Health News Media, and October 14th, 2019. So we know that school shootings and trauma and violence have been on the rise the past 5 to 10 years, especially in the United States, where we have more access to weapons than some other countries. So talking about these things has been just really important, and how to handle these things. And the other thing in the past 5 or 10 years that we've seen a rise in has been children's access to media. So access to media for people that are under 18. So when I say children, it's kind of minors of all ages. So we know that news and immediate opinions are something that is so rampant in our society for even young children that know how to access that. So this has really kind of changed our whole approach to life and how children can be impacted by things. So those are kind of the premises that I'm also thinking about, is our day and age, which is very different than it has been historically. The thing that has been consistent throughout history is that children need to be treated differently and be given age-appropriate information. So we're going to also talk about these things in a developmental context. So that's why you can see kind of we're discussing it on age-based approach, and some of that is also going to be developmental. So some people might be age 5, but maybe act more like a 2-year-old, or at age 10, but act more like a 5-year-old. So really, it says age, chronological age, but that might be different than developmental age. And we also know that developmentally, children develop in different areas at different times. So communication might be high, emotions might be low. So that's also the context that I come from and work from, is also developmentally that children may be more developed, older, younger, in different areas of development in their lives. So as you're writing questions, you can we're going to look through that framework of how things are going. So I just want to, first of all, to start with like a deep breath, because it's such a heavy topic that we're going to talk about. And if you guys can just breathe together, so breathe in through your nose and just kind of out, and letting some of that go out of your body. One thing that we practice a lot for parents, that's the #1 thing, is what is the presence that we're bringing to the situation. So our presence, and after we are able to regulate ourselves, is really going to be the paramount thing to do. So to think about that. So I really kind of wanted to start with that when I wrote this up. So it's just so important for children in your care to hear the truth and appropriate narrative from you, from a stable adult. So being aware of your own feelings and what you guys are bringing to the situation is going to be so important. And thinking about when you are presenting to them to appear calm, and that you're in charge and you know what to do in this situation, and you know how to keep them safe, even if a lot of times we don't feel like that at all, and we are confused and we don't know. And being very careful, especially in this day and age, not to process our emotions with our children. And it's so easy to do now, because a lot of us work at home, or we're in the car and the speakerphone is on, and we're just all together so much with everything on speaker. So it's really important to have adult conversations out of earshot and child conversations in an appropriate way. So that's kind of just the overall type of things, and then we're going to get into some specifics of how we can do this. So as you are able to model for your kids appropriate calm, you can also model for them, like, I need to take a break. I'm overwhelmed. And that's really such a great thing that you can do to say, it's too much, or I can't talk about this anymore right now, or I need to go talk to an adult about this because it's not something that's appropriate for me to talk with you, or I'm going to ask you to leave the room if someone else is upset. And modeling this also for other adults around you to protect your own children. If that makes sense. So we can really decide, like, in our house, this is how we decide how things are. And in our home, we have child-friendly conversations, we have teen-friendly conversations, we have adult-friendly conversations, and really don't want those all to run together and to mix together, because it can be very, very confusing, especially in situations like this, where children don't know the context for trauma and for tragedy, and they don't have access to resources. We just talk about this kind of in a global sense. Even if you say to a child, like, I don't have enough money for that right now, that can mean so many things to a child that for us, I mean, even my husband tonight, he said, I forgot my wallet and I can't get anything to eat. So that for a child to hear could be devastating. For me, it's like, okay, well, we have 10 credit cards or we have money, but for them, that could mean overhearing that or being told that could mean something so different. So just kind of thinking about that. What is the context of their life? How do they handle things? What is their emotional capacity for these things? But also, what does guns mean to them? What does death mean to them? How many times have they experienced these types of things? Have they been to a funeral? Do they know what a shooting is? Are they familiar with guns or what guns are used for? Do they know about a school? Are they homeschooled? Are they, these types of things. So just really kind of keeping these things in mind to be able to explain to them the context of their world. One of the things that really kind of talked about in the article that I liked the verbatim words that they used was giving our kids, again, the story and the narrative from a trusted person. And so looking at that and thinking about, for young children, really kind of giving them a truth if it's necessary. So some of our kids are going to hear about this and some of them aren't. So it isn't necessary to give them the full truth, all the truth that they are probably never going to be exposed to for young children, especially like preschool kids and young kids that aren't going to be exposed to this. And really even, I spoke with another family who, talking to their older kids about not talking to their younger kids about that, if that makes sense. And, we often already have to do that with video games or movies or things like that, but really, things like someone breaking into a school to shoot people is a concept that is going to be way too much for a little one or a preschooler that has never experienced something like that and survived it. Because basically those are the only kids that can really understand that you can experience those types of things and really not lose your life, if that makes sense. So otherwise it just feels like too big of a concept. So when you're speaking to them, some things that I was thinking about and writing down, talking about this, is using words that are familiar to them. So this is really for young children. So words like scary, scared, protector, helper. A bad person came into this place and wanted to try to hurt people, but the helpers knew what to do. And so those are things and those are words that kids are going to understand. So thinking about in terms of that. And a lot of kids have also done safety drills. So they know what to do. So we can also say something that I liked that I heard was, kids like you knew what to do. So I felt like that was such a nice phrase for kids, is that when people are practicing things, and it seems scary, but empowering our children that we know what's happening, we are in charge, we're in control, but also they're doing a good job. They are empowered. Because a lot of kids, when we are the only people that can comfort them, you really are kind of driving up, fears when they leave you, or, attachment things, because if we're their only comfort, but if we can tell them, well, you know what to do, and you know how to find safe people. We've talked about this, and you know who that person is, because if we're the only person, if we're fearful, and the only thing we do is hold them close, which is what we want to do, is I'm just going to keep them here with me because I'm the only one. Once they start sensing that, it's very difficult to get them to be able to feel comfortable leaving us as well. So just being mindful of those things. Keeping the words to a minimum. This is also very difficult because we also want to talk about it. When we think about, again, this for children, we can let them lead the conversation because, again, children are also going to go to school and maybe even hear it from other young children. And what did you hear about this? And what have you heard that's going on? And what kind of stories are people talking about? What do you think happened? Are things that are important? And then giving a very concise, age-appropriate summary of kind of the things that happened. Someone came into the school and wanted to hurt people. And I've already dealt with young kids with this, and they were like, well, what did they have? What were they using? Wanting some specific information, and again, kind of going back to what did you hear, what has been told to you, and then kind of building on that. Do you have questions about that? And often then the children's questions are, can they come to my school? Can they come where I am? What am I going to do when this happens? So then you guys can process and kind of talk about that. Well, these are the safe people. You know what to do. Your school is safe. This is the things you practice. And you are so smart and so strong, and you know just what to do in those situations. Because we've talked about it, and you guys have practiced it. Any questions? I don't know if it's better to kind of break it up with things for young children, or anything that would be specific to kind of those things.
Do you have, my kids are homeschooled, but I'm just curious, on a school level, I know some schools have prepared by doing drills and different things, but do you believe or do you know are all of them doing some sort of a shooting drill or make that mandatory? Because when you're talking about you've practiced this and you know this, where are you pulling? You've already done this from.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys are licensed. Is there something by the state that's licensure required? Okay, so the state mandates someone that's licensed by the state does shooting drills. Okay, so I guess it would depend on, and you're a private school as well, so probably any type of, it seems like it's pretty mandatory now that at least it's discussed, and possibly a plan is put into place.
They don't call them shooting drills, they call them lockdown drills.
Yeah.
And that's for even any outside threats. It could be anything.
And that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's more of like a safety. Yeah. Yeah, it probably, I guess tornadoes and weather and those type of things would be different, but lockdown, could even be if there's a dog in the parking lot, anything like that. So really not to alarm, but yeah, thank you for that clarification. Is that, yeah.
Practicing these things is really important because the shootings or these situations don't just happen to school. We've seen it happen at shopping malls or churches. So.
Yeah. Did you guys hear? He was talking about practicing these things or having these conversations are important for all of us because we know now these violent things don't just happen at school where they have organized drills and organized lockdown and safety drills, but talking about, and really a lot of it too is kind of letting your kids know, when we talk about these things and it's a safe or unsafe situation, you can start these things as early as holding my hand in a parking lot. This is what safety means. This is why we practice safety. This is my job to keep you safe. But also, yeah, we've had a lot of issues in malls, in shopping places, in parking lots, things like that. The really, again, kind of the important things, just like with discipline or our frustration levels, is kind of checking ourselves before we're going to interact with children, and then also not over talking and giving too many details. Even with the families that I've kind of spoken to, it's very hard not to want to do that. But it's very overwhelming, especially for a young child's mind, to even take that in. I mean, it's a lot for me to take in, to even comprehend all the different details if I actually lay down and start thinking about all the different steps it took to have this happen, and from this person's perspective, or that person's perspective, or that person's perspective. And I mean, frankly, I haven't even thought like from a student's perspective, because I'm thinking more from adult perspective. So their perspective is going to be way different. So just be mindful of that. What is their context? What is their reality? And also, what are their resources? You know, I'm a grown adult. I've been a first responder. I've been in critical situations. I have money. I have a car. I have all the things that I need. I have a phone. Those are all the things a child has none of. So when we're thinking about these things, keep it very much in the small context of the world that they live in, and the things that they actually have access to as far as resources. Any questions or discussion about that? Yes.
I taught preschool for several years, and it was interesting to hear children give feedback on things like, for example, one of my children told me that they thought their dad was going to get arrested because he was drinking and driving with kids in the car. Well, they had been to McDonald's literally, and he was drinking and Coke, and he got pulled over. But in the child's mind, that was drinking and driving. And how, children, yes, and when you're driving down the road and you pass a cop and you're going a little over the speed limit, how you kind of cringe and you're like, oh goodness, they're going to pass the cop. Well, that kind of feedback for a child makes them not feel like the police officer is a safe person.
Yep.
And thinking through those kinds of things, even in our day-to-day, it seems so simple, and how that impacts them.
Yep.
It was really interesting to hear from a 3-year-old's perspective how they saw the world.
Every day, yeah.
Yes.
It just cracks me up all the time.
Yes. So that is something that I think, especially, just that connotation of ambassador knowledge.
Yes. Well, and that's a great point, and that's why we really start with, what do you know? What have you heard? What kind of stories are people talking about? Because again, if you have heard a young child explain something, it can be very comical to us, but you also think like, well, why would they know that? Like, why would they know drinking means drinking beer or drinking alcohol to the point that you're going to be arrested and impaired in your driving? That's a huge amount of things. I mean, I sat with a little one today, and I said, oh, what did you do today? And he's like, oh, regular kindergarten stuff. Like, to him. And I thought, what does that mean? Because I'm not a kindergartner. So when he said, oh, just regular kindergarten stuff. And I was like, do you have circle time? He's like, no, babies have circle time. We don't have circle time anymore. And I was like, okay. So, and that's such a funny thing, because I was like, well, I'm doing regular grown-up stuff. But what does that mean to them? Nothing. I'm drinking and driving. I'm not drinking and driving. You can't have Coke in the car because you're drinking and driving, And we threaten kids a lot of things too, where we don't mean to. Smoking's going to kill you. You're going to go to jail if you don't go to school, and things like that. So really being mindful. And all of us can say something that was told to us as a child that we grew up, and we're like, what? I'm not going to die if I do that. So we think about things in terms of that, but also the ways in which they are able to be empowered in the things they can do. You are so good at this. And we go through even safety plans, especially after the tornado. Our community has been through so many tragedies, with the Christmas parade and then the tornado and then COVID, and COVID has been such a long-term, ongoing trauma to our whole world. So thinking about things in terms of that for your family, and how has our family dealt with hard times? How do we deal with things? And we can all sit here and think of the positive ways that we cope with things and the negative ways that we cope with things. And a lot of parents I meet with, I say, okay, well, what are the coping strategies you use that you model for your kids? And a lot of faces like, I don't think that's a good idea. So, you know, we know our kids are watching us, and I mean, you know, I can tell so many stories, but I had, you know, a little guy right in front of his dad. He's like, what do you do when you're mad? I just yell at people. Where did you learn that? Well, because my dad, he yells at his workers. He gets on his phone and yells at them. And that's how you get people to change. And it's like, that is kind of a way you get people to change, is getting big and intimidate them. But also just thinking about, even, is that something I need to change right now to show my children that, you know what, and even putting words to that, to say, you know what, sometimes I just need to take a breath. Sometimes I just need to go get a drink of water. Sometimes I need to stop talking, because the more I talk, the more angry I'm getting at you. So I'm gonna go take a break and come back. So what are the coping skills you use? Or, you know, I call your grandma and I talk to her, she's my friend. Or I go to a movie, I go for a walk, I go for a swim, something like that. So thinking about, because they already know what the coping skills are, but if we're able to give them words, like this is how you can do when you feel nervous and scared. And this is what our family's done. Remember when this happened and how great we did, because we came together. Remember COVID, because this is how we dealt with that. We all came together, or we made new friends down the street, and we became a group together, and we hung out with them and played with them. We know what to do in these situations, and we're gonna be together. So really just reminding them, kind of a team, and we're working together and empowering them on the things that they are able to do. Any questions, comments on any of that? So just kind of reviewing some of this. Well, I'm going to go into like the teens, and some of these things were very interesting to me. We know now that anybody over 5 years old basically has access to way too much information. We know that there's an information overload. So much research coming out about screen times and all of the things. I mean, even like what's popping up on my phone right now, 14 minutes of terror, body cam footage provided, the grueling look at the final throes of the Nashville massacre. I mean, this is popping up without me touching anything on my phone. So you know your kids' phones, this is popping up also. And so thinking about that it really is important for you to be into your children's media. That's a whole nother talk on another night, but it's really important, especially in situations like this, that you're able to control the narrative and what your kids are listening to. So thinking about tweens, so kind of in between childhood and teenagerness, we are thinking about that they have access to way too much information, and really important to say, what have you heard? What are people talking about? If you've heard a young child explain a situation, have a middle schooler explain a situation or explain something, because generally they've heard about it in like the 7th grade bathroom, or they have heard about it at lunch with their friends, or from somebody else's mom or dad or something like that. So really being careful to say, again, I want to give you the facts, and also it's a great time to think about teaching your children how to sift through what is opinions, what is news, what are facts, like where is this information coming from? Is this someone's blog? Is this someone's TikTok video? Is this real information, and how do we take that in? Because it used to be basically, if we heard something from a person of authority, we sort of could believe them-ish. Now it's so confusing, because it seems to be like there's so many authorities on so many things. I see so many people online that call themselves doctors. I mean, for us as therapists that have gone to a lot of school, people are self-proclaimed life coaches, marriage coaches, these types of things, and it's like we have to tell people, okay, well, they're a parenting coach, but where did they come from? What did they do? So if we can start teaching our children where to get facts from, where to get information from, what is important, and opening that dialogue, so it's kind of running through us as a filter, if that makes sense. Thinking also about, it's really, again, important, even if they are in middle school, they're in high school, they seem older, they seem like their vocabulary is huge. they still are not able to cope with a huge amount of traumatic information. And at some point, do we need to say, you need to put your phone away, or there's no more news available? I mean, I've had to do that for myself, but also thinking about, cannot be the one to sit down and speculate with my child about my own fears. So really being careful of that as well. Process your own fears and your own just managing this with other adults, not with your children, even if they're in high school, even if they're in middle school, because they cannot cope with it. And they still want you to be the one that appears to be in control. They need a solid base. They need a true north. They need someone that like, oh, it's fine, I'm gonna ask my caregiver, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, because they know stuff. Hold on, I'm gonna go check with them. But if you're speculating, what if this? And oh my gosh, what if this happened? And oh, what do you think the police are gonna do? Where do you think they're gonna go? Do you think this? And we're having this dialogue like we're seeing in the media. It just drives up fear in kids, and it really continues to escalate the whole idea of our society that kids just doubt adults, that there's no true authority figures, there's no real truth. Does that make sense? Any questions kind of on that? And this is a great opportunity for that. The other thing that I really liked from this article and reading other things is letting them know, I want you to hear it from me, and I'm going to give you the facts, that you are the person that knows stuff, but also really listening to and talking about what happened and asking them if they have questions, or if they are going to come home and say to you some things that you don't necessarily agree with, and also that might be a complete outrageous lie, or just speculation from somebody's TikTok or something. So when they bring these things up, if we say, oh my gosh, why are you watching that nonsense? It's so stupid. That's going to shut down communication. So I thought that was so important they brought that up, because, and I wrote some of those things in here. So recognizing and validating feelings. I'm upset about this too. And careful with our words, again, like was mentioned. So thinking about, I'm upset about this too. That's a good question. Even if inside your parent brain, you're like, what? That's never going to happen. That's so stupid. How'd you even come up with that? We're not going to say that out loud. We're going to say, I've never thought about that side of it. Let's talk more about that. And thinking, because it's really going to also open up for you to know who your kids are hanging out with, what kind of conversations they're having, and what kind of things they're speculating, because they're having dialogue online. They're chatting about it. They're talking about it. They're going to get opinions from the 5 other 12-year-olds. So you want to be the voice that speaks into that. We talked a little bit about how you cope with things, but it's a great time too to recognize and normalize when sad and hard things happen. This is a normal way to feel. Just like when someone dies, it's normal to feel sad. It's normal to feel these kind of emotions. And some of our families, it's not comfortable, or it's not acceptable, and if our feelings are overwhelming to our children, they're going to stop talking about it, because we know the people like, oh, don't talk to her about that because she's going to freak out, or he's going to start yelling about it, or oh, she's always going to cry. Shh, don't bring that up. So we really need to think about and know, I'm going to take a breath. Yeah, I want to talk about this again, even though inside you might be freezing up with fear and thinking, I can't talk about this anymore. And if you can't, then lean on other adults that you know and put those people in your kids' lives, or tell them, I can't talk about this right now, but I'll talk about it in 30 minutes or after dinner or something like that. So thinking about how are we going to have these conversations, because it's just repetition that our brain learns. So when we think about, we've already talked about this, and you might want to say, I don't want to talk about this anymore. This is stupid. How many times have you watched the news already on your phone and watch it replay, and then you watch this person's opinion and that person's opinion? You want to keep replaying it. Like, did I hear this right? This is crazy. Is everybody okay? Who's that? What's happening here? What was that person doing? What were they wearing? Oh, what is this person thinking? Oh, let's pop this up. What's the new information? Your kids are going to want to do the same thing. So repetitively, maybe in their play, in drawing, discussing these types of things, they they might want to talk about it again. And if you see them kind of shutting down about things that have really been bothering them, you can also be the one to kind of prompt that discussion and say like, I don't know if we talked about this part. I mean, what are you still thinking about this? And what did you guys, have your friends been talking about this? What do you guys think about this? How do you think your school's going to handle that? What kind of ideas? And kind of try to start some dialogue about that. I think you wanted to do some questions too. Is that right? The other thing that I really liked that I just wanted to mention before we kind of open up for questions is discussing ways that they can help and get involved. So a lot of us, like, we hear about this and we think, what can I do? What can I help? And in these situations, it's over and done, and there's not really anything we can do physically, you know, or we think about a storm, we want to go help. What do they need? Do they need clothes? Do they need money? Do they need food? When we think about those things, for our children, we can also create ways that they can have opportunities. Children that I'm working with now that want to bring up this discussion, I also want to ask them, do you want to make a card for them? You know, we're sending cards for them. Do you want to send a card to the people from the school or the policemen that came in or the nurses and doctors? And I just love the ideas that people are kind of coming up with that kids can feel a part of that. And we do the same thing when a parent dies or someone significant dies for kids. Like, it's not gone. Nothing has ended. We can still put that in the memory box. Oh, you want to do, you know, they could have died 2 years ago, but we might still really want to have them do a Christmas card. We still really want to make a present for them. So just thinking also like, man, I wonder if our family could just come together and write some cards or maybe take lunch over to that police station or something like that. So just thinking too and modeling that for your kids of feeling affected and also looking outside themselves. Because really such a great way to reduce anxiety, reduce nervousness is to look outward and say, okay, if I'm just concentrating on me all the time, then that's going to cause me anxiety because I'm going to be fearful. But if I'm also able to look out and see like, wow, all right, everybody seems to be doing pretty okay. Everybody else seems kind of nervous and sad. It's fine. We all feel like this, but also, man, what about these guys over here? How can I make a difference in their lives? And especially if that's the culture of your family, that you want to be helpers or you want to model for them reaching outward into the world. So, and that they have also a bigger impact on someone just besides themselves. Because we all know so much of our life is, how do I feel? Why didn't I get that? How come, you know, what is happening for me? How do I look? How does this happen? And we're perpetuating that, so we're able to say like, hey, I wonder just what they need, because they had such a hard time at that place or that school or that hospital or the buildings around. I talked to another lady today who their office building is near there, and the people are so traumatized that we're just near the school from what had happened. And that honestly hadn't occurred to me until today. And this is just a lady I ran into. I don't know her, and I said, yeah, I'm talking about this tonight with some parents, and she's like, oh my gosh, my office building is right there, and people can't even come to work because of everything that happened. And they saw nothing, they just heard it all. So we think about how trauma works and how that has impacted people and how many layers that goes out. So even just thinking kind of about some things like that and letting your kids know, man, I wonder how those people felt, and letting them driving up their compassion and their empathy. Any questions that anybody wants to do verbally? So, like, should you discuss things with kids if they're homeschooled, if they don't go to school? Yep. You're gonna have to talk a little bit louder. I'm sorry, this event today.
I don't think it was we homeschool now because they're afraid to go to school.
Yes.
So what can you say to these kids? You don't have supposed to see do things that they want to do.
Yeah. A lot of these questions are going to be case by case. You know, it really is. Well, the second question is, should we prompt our kids to report signs of mental illness and those things? And so really looking at, I think I put it in here thinking about what are some things where you realize, okay, the best thing is to kind of get back to your routine. And like, okay, I'll revisit that later in a couple weeks. Right now, we're going to stick to our regular routine. We're going to get back to it because a lot of times that's going to normalize how we're feeling, is when we get back to our regular safe routine. But then also monitoring for things that might really impede functioning. So for children, a lot of times, and teens, that's going to look like, I think I put that in here about bad behavior. That we think about clingy, whiny, irritable, tired, grumpy, those things. We're going to be supporting that for the next few weeks or months, thinking about, instead of, oh, you're being so disrespectful, or, we're going to make this big decision to go ahead and pull you out of school right now, thinking about, let's take some time, because we also want to model for kids, so let's take some time to make decisions further down the road from a tragedy. We don't want to just make these decisions when everything is heightened. So I would try to, unless you see extreme symptoms of vomiting, not sleeping, uncontrollable crying, things that would be extreme stress, is we'll revisit that again in a month or 2 weeks. Because, definitely, my first thing is like, I want to get in my camper and go sit by myself, so I get it. Combating social media influences. That's a whole week's seminar. We highly recommend, lots of parents I'm working with are having no screen time, no electronics, no media during the school week, possibly some lessened on the weekends, but if you want focus to be changed, you're going to have to take control of some of that. And if you have open internet in your house, it's very difficult to monitor. There's a lot of ways to do that. I don't know if you guys do any classes on that or anything, or programs, or.
We have before, we obviously do.
Yeah, it's really hard, and these type of things bring it to our attention, that when you just have uncontrolled access and little kids coming in talking about, footage from the cops, it's out of hand, but it's not an easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of time and effort, but generally, once you make that shift, we take all the phones at 8 o'clock, or, whatever it is, and I'm happy I do parent coaching, so I also can do parent coaching sessions if anybody wants to kind of hash through the specific needs of your family, but it's hard, it's more case by case. Yeah, so how to ask our children to keep our important conversations like this private in case other parents do not want their children knowing. It's difficult because it's hard for kids because most kids are going to be talking about it, so you can say, this is how our family's discussing it, but it's going to be very difficult for kids not to talk to their friends about this. And so, I don't know if somebody wants to expand on that, if it's your question, or if that helps, but it's like once kids learn about sex, they just kind of tell all their friends about it too, so I don't know. It's a difficult thing for people, and probably more on the parents who do not want their children to know about this at all, would be probably keeping them more away from publicity, because especially in this area that's so close to the event, it's difficult.
Well, mentally, if their friend says, my mommy and daddy will literally be talking about this in school, having her child respect and honor mentally. Yeah.
Sometimes kids are going to be like, what? But yeah, talking about, this is a great thing we talk about in our family, but it is, it's hard, but that is something they can definitely do. How do I discuss the shooter with my child? And so they're showing anger towards them. Is that okay? What is the right response we all should have? So, definitely almost every child that I do play therapy with, there's good guys and bad guys. and we know that. And bad guys kill people, and it's very difficult, but that's the way it is. You know, we don't understand what was going on in that person's mind. We don't understand what was happening that day, but that person did a very terrible thing. So, I mean, it's very difficult, you know, to sit with kids who have aggressive play or that are acting out these things, but it's very normal, and in some families more than others. So even families that, you know, are in the military, it's very much a part of the culture of their family, and this is how it is, and it's very respected, and it's honorable with police, with these things. So thinking about too that we are heroes because we can protect ourselves, you know, and there are bad people in the world, and having anger towards them, it's very, very normal. And again, I have 3 sons. It is difficult to witness and be around aggressive play and violent play and just kind of watching that, but it is normal for kids to be replaying things that have traumatically they've heard about or that they've experienced or that they've seen, and to do it repetitively. So we talk with parents a lot about that. Anybody want to talk more about that? And again, I mean, this kind of goes back to a lot of the speculation that we're hearing in our society. Yeah. Sorry.
My son's 5, and you know, I got told, oh, that's okay.
She's like, awesome, I want it.
You know, and he was, finger guns at school, and
Yeah.
got in trouble for it. And I don't know, it's just hard to like explain to him not to do that, and like in the school settings we're currently in. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess just knowing it's normal and just adapting is the best choice.
Well, and we were even talking, I'm sorry, I forgot. Alicia, yeah, we're saying kids know also what we can do at school and what we can do at home. And definitely, I mean, sometimes we can say bad words at home, we don't say it at school. You know, we don't do that, we don't act this way at church, we might act this way at home. We might act this way at grandma's house, we don't act this way here, or, you know, what they do at their place, but that's not how we do it here. So some of it you could definitely say, like, you know, they don't want you playing with guns at school, that's a school rule. So if the value given is that's a school rule, or that's grandma's rule, or that's Miss Carrie's rule, then that's how it is. And so kind of kids will adapt to that, and generally teachers know you're working on that, and to say this is kind of what we're coaching in, and asking teachers also, like, how do you say that at school? Because generally it's usually like a no weapons pretending policy, which is hard in a child because there's sword fights and this, and, you know, it's all happening. But thinking about, like, in this environment, we aren't allowed to do that. Yeah. Any other questions or anything about that? And it is difficult even in this scenario because we are going to see increased gunplay because we've seen this. You know, I'm the cop who took down the shooter or something like that. And so we think about that. So really educating educators about this and what's going to be in our classrooms, what's going to be in our world, because often it's going to be copied and replayed as we deal with it and process it. So it's a good question. Yeah, how do I help my child overcome anxiety that they have going to school now? Does anybody, I mean, is there an age or something specific that we want to talk about? We've kind of talked about generalizations, but anything specific that would be more helpful for anyone on this? Yeah. Okay, and how is that? Are they talking about it, or are they just nervous about the whole situation? Yes. Okay. Bigger symptoms, and again, kind of normalizing that. Like, we don't like to see our kids unhappy. But it's also such a great learning ground for, like, yeah, like, stinky stuff happens. Like, bad things are going to happen, and this is how we're going to cope with it. because it won't be the first or the last terrible thing we go through, and this is how we feel, and it's okay. We would be more concerned if they didn't feel like that, if that kind of makes sense for you guys. And to say, me too. Like, I'm so mad about this. I'm so sad about this. I feel terrible about this. I can't believe this happened. And saying, okay, those types of things, and letting them know, and just, you can get extra hugs, who's your contact person at the school, and we talked about some of the other things, you can do some thinking about a calm place. I know a lot of classrooms are also implementing some things to help kids deal with that. So doing some social emotional things at school. If you guys are in this area, in your classrooms, your teachers want people to come and help with that, we are available to do that. So just know if they need help with that to help kids cope, we can do with that. But kind of just going through these things and just normalizing, also kind of feeling crummy for a while, because this is a horrible, horrible thing that happened, and very unexpected, out of nowhere. How do I kindly ask other adults to stop a conversation around my child that's not age appropriate? Kindness is interpreted as by each person. I would say, hey, we're practicing age-appropriate developmental conversations around our kids, and we don't allow that. We don't want that talk in our house. If it's in your home, please go outside. I mean, setting limits is that is such a good thing for your kids to see you protecting them, and to be saying it in a stern voice, to say, hey, no, we aren't talking about that here. Those are adult conversations. We're already nervous enough here, guys. Or, you can kind of make, and I would really also practice it. Like, this is the thing I'm going to say. I work with this mom when her little guy used to have such fits, and some of the things we used to practice is, what is the verbiage you're going to use when people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're letting him do that. And you're like, well, these are the things that I'm going to be prepared to say, because in the moment, it's hard. So even kind of preparing, and what's the verbiage that we're going to come up with when it's like, you have no idea what's going on, it's not your business, I don't have to explain this to you, but what I'm going to tell you is, in this house, we're protecting our child's ears and our hearts and our brains, and that's an adult conversation. So, I don't know if anybody else has a kinder way to say that. I'm probably not that kind, because I believe in kids' mental health. So, any other questions related to that, or more specific things? What do I do to help my child stop fixating on what happened? So, describe fixating. It's a spectrum, fixating. So they want to talk about it a lot, or I don't know if anybody would be willing to share, but I think it's, again, pretty normal and typical to want to talk about that a lot. If your child is regularly fixated on things repetitively, and this is part of their personality regularly, what are some things that you generally would use to stop that behavior? Some things that we talk about as a kind of practice would be like, hey, we're going to talk about this for 10 minutes after dinner, but we won't be talking about it every night at dinner, possibly. So again, setting that limit, because if the rest of your family's like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this conversation again in the car about the shooter, or you can come and talk to me privately, or we're going to talk about this, for 5 more times, or 10 minutes, or something like that. So you kind of can give a limit to that. But also we encourage children, teens, to also, that really want to talk about things and have a lot of questions, is also to keep like life books or journals. So you know what, you're right. Anytime you have those big thoughts or those big feelings, you could go scribble in the book about it, you could write about it, you could stick stickers in this book, but yeah, let's get those questions down. And when we talk after dinner, that would be a great time to do that. So you can kind of channel those things as well. So any question, any other kind about that?
Not necessarily about that, but should we be concerned if there's not big emotion, if you're expecting your child to be like, oh my goodness, I am the only one who's seen this a number of times now, and he's like, I'm used to it, which is so
Right.
sad for my heart.
Yeah.
So, what if there's an opposite?
Yeah. they usually have a big response to things? Are they connected to this in any way, or does this just sound like, again, like a faraway tragedy? Is this, it is hard. And a lot of kids also play shooter video games. A lot of kids have a lot of experience with fantasy violence. So it's, I mean, it's many layered, but thinking, even asking them about that, like, hey, this doesn't seem to really bother you anymore. And most kids are gonna say, I mean, I just talked with the mom about this, and the child was like, well, I don't even know them. And for us, it's like, oh my gosh, you're horrible, you're gonna be like a serial killer. Instead, you're just like, okay, yeah. And also, again, the inundation we have of news, and tragic news, and just awful. I mean, like growing up, it was just so different when all we had was TV, or all we had was radio, or all we had was this, and our parents could just keep us from that. But now it's just all the time from all levels. So, I mean, think about maybe screen time. How much stuff are they already kind of taking in? So it might be a bigger conversation as well to be, you know, what does upset you, or what would be something tragic, and it might just be, well, I'm not connected to that emotionally, or I can't imagine it. I mean, the concern of that would be like, I don't ever want to deal with something sad, you know, and that definitely is some kids, like, I don't ever want to talk about this because I'm terrified. So, any other questions, comments?
So I have my son's age, second grade, and he hasn't listened, so I don't know if he does not. Is it appropriate to use this circumstance to protect him, or just let him? I mean, I don't.
He's in public school. Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah.
he does do the drills. I know he does the drill segments.
Yeah.
With the concept. But
Yeah.
should I take this opportunity of having and say, hey, it does happen? I don't want to. Make it. But,
Yeah, because he doesn't have a context for it. Yep.
Yeah.
So his context would be the drills,
Yes.
you know, and how he deals with that. But also, like, hey, you know, there was something bad that happened, and a bad guy came into a school not very far from here. So you might hear people talking about that. If you have questions about that, yeah, we can talk about that. Or because then he might be like, oh yeah, so and so said something, and he might not have understood what they were saying, or it might have been confusing to him, or maybe he didn't know or didn't understand, so someone else is like, well, don't you know? Or, you know, he might have felt embarrassed about it. So I would,
worry about it. I don't want him to like, here's something you like.
yeah, I would say most kids who are in public school will at least hear something about it. Yeah. And that's, again, just like the tornado, you know, anything like that. Like, even if kids didn't experience it, other kids had, or know about it and talk about it.
So I'm kind of in the same boat. I have a second grade daughter. So it's appropriate for us to just start a conversation at school, running at practice and just starting a conversation by finding everything out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can even say, like, we had a bad thing happen that not too far from here. You know, I wonder if people at your school are talking about it, or, you know, you're doing drills, things like that. What do you think about that? How does that make you feel? Because definitely some kids just do not want to acknowledge because it's too scary.
So if the response is, no, I haven't heard anything, is it appropriate for us to then use those familiar basic words and say stuff, you know, and bring it up, talk about it, or just let it be that they haven't heard anything and you come talk to us?
It would really depend on the child. You know, if it's going to cause more harm than good, then saying something like, hey, if people do talk about this, you know, this bad thing did happen, but to initiate to say the whole story, I'm not sure that would be valuable for a second grader, you know, that doesn't, again, have context for that. But generally they're going to hear something, and letting them know, like, sometimes these things happen really far away, but, you know, it was just over there by someplace they might know, or, you know, we've been to Nashville or something like that. So, you know, if people do talk about that, we can talk more about that, but this is why you do drills or something like that, but kind of playing it by ear. But yeah, I mean, second grade is hard. Some of them act like they're 40, and then some of them act like they're 3. So it's hard, you know, to say which one, you know, just how it would benefit your child to know if they might be overwhelmed if some child told them the whole thing. And that would be kind of, I think, more my concern. Or if they were like, oh yeah, my mom already told me something happened, you know, give a context.
Would you be concerned that say they haven't heard anything like that they just don't realize that's what you're talking about?
How old are they?
That well that they I mean, like so like hey no I haven't heard anything but they say, oh well
Again, 8-year-old boys, it's like,
and then they say, oh yeah that like I mean is that a common thing or is that just our child being weird?
again, yeah. I mean, if he said, oh yeah, that, like, yeah, kids are talking about that, then that would kind of be, oh, well, what did they say about that? What do you guys think happened? Where did you hear that? Oh, so-and-so on the bus said something about a guy shooting up Nashville. Okay, well, what really happened, you know, is this, or is it, you know, so kind of, generally if it's like, oh, that, then they know something. Anybody else? Any questions? Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. I mean, we just appreciate you letting us come and talk. And we have people here in green shirts from Lantern Lane, so you know who we are. If you would like us to pray with you, talk with you, I mean, we just wanted to have a presence here because we know it's so just scary as a parent to hear this and deal with this. And I mean, my encouragement to you also is you're not going to do anything terribly wrong, say anything terribly wrong that's going to ruin your child for life. So anything you've already said, some people are already stressed about that. Don't worry about it. Process it, talk about it. Like, oh yeah, I thought that's what's happening, or I shouldn't have told you that, or maybe this. But just go back and do that.